New routes, hopefully also come new jobs. I'm interested to know the employment forecast for the airline because, of course, when you have redundancies, I would imagine that there will be some cuts as well. So where do you see employment going with the airline?
Absolutely. It's something that we want to be open and transparent about. It is a bit of a mixed story. We're certainly mindful that with some of those redundancies that you mentioned, the number of non-contract or management positions here in Honolulu, that number will go down some over the next year or two. The reality is that the vast majority of the non-contract employees at Hawaiian Airlines have been offered either an interim position that will take us out to one of the integration milestones, or in many cases have already been offered a long-term position with the combined company. And there will be more long-term positions that will be established here as well as we go forward. So that piece we're working through, and for those that will not be staying with Hawaiian, we're approaching that with as much care as we can and working very closely with those individuals to help them find sort of their next career opportunity. For the more frontline positions, not only will we be retaining all of the frontline union represented positions here in Hawaii, but adding to them. And in fact, we're in the process of hiring pilots, and also over 100 flight attendants will be hired over the next several months at Hawaiian Airlines as an example of where we're increasing the workforce here. And there will be a number of frontline airport related jobs and maintenance technician jobs that we'll be hiring in the months ahead as well.
So I know that you had mentioned that you guys are still developing the playbook, so to speak, between these two entities coming together. When you're bringing on new positions like flight attendants and pilots, are they undergoing, this type of training and the process that we traditionally saw with Hawaiian Airlines, or is there integration with what Alaska Airlines is used to doing with training their, employees and onboarding process? How are you mirroring those two together? Because I imagine the styles could be somewhat different, and there may be some differences there. But are you still sticking to sort of what was done before when it comes to onboarding and finding new employees?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ryan. We are sticking currently with the current hiring, onboarding, talent selection, and training processes that Hawaiian's had in place for many years. And in particular, speaking of flight attendants, it's not only the important training that flight attendants receive around the safety of serving as a cabin crew member, but how to deliver on that onboard experience that is such a special part of the Hawaiian Airlines brand. So for now, those aspects of the training and the onboarding remain the same. Over time, as we get to a single operating platform, for sure, we will sort of blend the training programs of both airlines. And when we do that, by the way, I would expect that we will get to a great place because we will be intentionally trying to preserve the best of both airlines' training programs as we bring them together. But an important aspect of it will be back to this notion of the signature moments of the brand. For those that part of their job is delivering on that branded experience, even when we get to a combined state, we will be focusing on how to deliver on that Hawaiian branded experience for those that will be serving on those flights.
You did also mention neighbor islands, and I think a lot of folks here in Hawaii, that's the primary experience they have with Hawaiian Airlines. I want to ask you about the Huaka'i program, what you can tell us about benefits for residents and what you're hoping for that.
Absolutely. I've been spending a lot of time on neighbor island flights myself, and it's been great to get out and visit each one of the different islands and destinations that we serve here in Hawaii. And as I have done so, I have recognized that there is a lot of folks traveling for all different types of needs. Some of it is, tourism related, but a lot of it is to, go to a family member's anniversary or wedding, or come to Honolulu for a medical appointment or shopping, things of that nature. And we want to support that type of travel to the greatest degree possible. And so I am really excited that we have now launched the Huaka'i by Hawaiian program, which is a program designed for and exclusive for residents of Hawaii. One aspect of it is to show our deep commitment to the residents of Hawaii. Another aspect, honestly, is to acknowledge that folks here in Hawaii are looking for ways for air travel to be more affordable, especially on neighbor island travel. And that is exactly what the Huaka'i program does by offering a free checked bag and also a quarterly discount of 10 to 20% off of a booking on a neighbor island flight. So the intent is to make it directly more affordable for traveling on Hawaiian Airlines neighbor island.
I think that bag will be much appreciated.
Yeah, definitely.
Or surfboard or golf bag too.
Very important with neighbor island travel.